Hey everyone, welcome to Base 10 Montessori. My name is Teresa, and today I want to show you around the language area in an AMI Montessori classroom. Now, this is going to be shown through the Montessori.org video, mainly because you can actually see teachers working with children in this video, so I thought it gave a really nice overview of the language area in this video. Now, this video is actually different from the one that's on their website. It's the same video, but it's different because when I went to watch that video, which is about 25 minutes long, it added a lot of stuff from elementary in there, and it had, it's a really well done video, but it kind of spliced everything up into different sections and placed it in different places in the video, which for the purposes of this video that they put on their website, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's really well done. But for the purpose of trying to get it to reflect what I'm trying to go through with the language development series, I felt like it would be better if I took out that elementary portion for right now so that we can kind of see the journey of starting from a very young child first entering into the classroom and then ending up with that third-year kindergarten student who's doing all sorts of grammar work. So I am going to put the link in the description below so that you can listen to it and watch it on their site. Okay, so here we are in the sensorial area. And the reason why we're starting our visual tour of the language area with an area that's not language is because I really want to show you what we're doing as we're building up to some of the things that we're doing in the language area. Now, right here in the sensorial area, you're going to see these four blocks are called the cylinder blocks. These are the knobbed cylinder. These are the knob cylinders right here, and you're going to see that the guide, the teacher, is picking each one up very slowly, and they're going to mix them all up, and you'll see the child also picking up those blocks, the cylinder blocks, very slowly. And the reason why this is also a precursor to language, something I really want to show you, is again, we're really developing that pincer grip right there. So right there, that movement, that's developing the hand for writing. And so when we're talking about the pincer grip and development, it doesn't start in the language area, it starts in the sensorial area, and it can start in the practical life area. So really it's going to be a precursor to doing language. But there's also another thing with the sensorial area is that we always give language to anything we work with. So there's a lot of language that goes on here, and I'll go into that a little bit deeper in a different video. So I just want to get a little bit of an idea as we go along. So let's continue. These are the rough and smooth boards, and this is one we introduced pretty early in the classroom. And why is this important for language? As you can see that her finger is following there's a sandpaper strip and a smooth strip. So she has this tracking going on with the fingers, and that tracking is also going to apply to the sandpaper letters. So being able to track that sandpaper both by feel and visually is really important. That's going to help the child figure out where their hand should go for following the letters when we start doing that sound symbol relationship. And also this this activity actually is usually done blindfolded. So they are going through this where they're just feeling the strips, and then they're saying rough and smooth, rough and smooth. So again, we're giving language as we're doing this. And this is one of the few materials in the Montessori environment, particularly in the sensorial environment, where we give the language for it within the first lesson.
Are they the same?
So again, this is in the sensorial area. This is color box 1, and actually in training they taught us that we don't give language with the color box 1. That comes in color box 2 with the secondary colors and the tertiary colors. So we usually don't give language with this one, but Different training centers might do it differently, and that's okay. So what's important about this? Developing the visual center of the brain is important. That's going to be important for language. And also, again, we're giving language with this. So the child's being exposed to language through the sensorial materials.
Even 120.
So we've made it to the practical life area, and if you watched my table scrubbing video, you know that control and coordination of movement, developing the hand for writing is a really important part of getting ready for the language area.
When you have to wiggle it so hard. It's my turn to do the teaspoon of baking powder. 1 teaspoon. Yes, 1 teaspoon. I got 1 teaspoon.
Now this is something I've made a video on as well. I'll probably do another video here soon, and I'll go more into that phonemic awareness and the phonological awareness. But before we start introducing the sandpaper letters, we spend a lot of time on that phonemic awareness, hearing the sounds in a word. And this section, this clip right here, is going to give a really nice demonstration of how we do that.
Apple begins with A. What's this one? Frog begins with. That's enough. What's this one? Tape. Tub. And for mine. I spy with my little eyes something that starts with. Can you find it, Kimmy? It starts with. I spy with my little eye something that starts with. What? Can you find it, Elias? What? 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 Well, Elias, could you leave these on the counter? And Stephen, can you hold my roll? Thank you.
That's an activity I do a lot. And when we do this, we're going to start out with the beginning sounds like the t, 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 tub, w, 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 whale. Now, that's just how we start the game. The game goes on further and gets more complex when we start doing ending sounds like, I spy with my little eye something that ends with the sound b, b. So that could be tub, tub. And so when we do that, we keep getting more complex as it goes. And then the hardest thing to do is find that middle sound. I spy with my little eye something that has the sound in the middle. That middle sound of and it could be t, b, tub. And so we're going to go through and we'll do the first sound, ending sound, middle sound, because that is the order of complexity. And so we'll go through I Spy several times, and sometimes this is a student-led activity as well. So sometimes a student will lead this and sometimes the teacher will lead it. It just depends on what students you have and if they're really good at the phonemic awareness and if they're really interested in working with other children. So I'm just going to stop there real quick. Did you see how she was tracing the sandpaper letter? And when she was tracing it, the child was watching it. You could see his fingers were really ready to do the same thing. And that is what I mean by tracking the letter and tracing the letter. So when we're doing that preparation in the sensorial area with the rough and the smooth boards, and the child was feeling the rough and smooth, that's a precursor for the sandpaper letters, because before we introduce the symbol with those sandpaper letters, we really want to make sure that their hand is prepared for that activity. So we think a lot about those little details in Montessori of making sure that not only can the child receive the knowledge of that sound symbol relationship, but they can also, their hands are prepared for it as well. So in order to get to the sandpaper letters, what have we seen so far? We've done the rough and smooth boards, and we've done the phonemic awareness of I Spy. So those are two things that we work on a lot before we even get to introducing the sandpaper letters. Now, these two children right here in the video are going to be playing a game with the sandpaper letters. Now, it is not one that I was taught in my training, and so when I saw the children doing this activity in a classroom that I was taking over, I was not a fan of it. I'm like, what are they doing with these? I thought it was a fantasy play, and so I didn't really allow it in my classroom. Now that I know a little bit more about it, now that I understand a lot of people tend to use it and how they use it, like, okay, that makes sense. But I have to tell you, at first, when I first saw them playing the knock knock game, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. So it's one that I guess, I don't know if they teach it in some training centers, but it was not taught in mine. But I like the way the children are working with it in this video. All right, so right there, you really saw them using that as a phonemic awareness activity, and they're really focusing on that first sound. They didn't really use it much for the actual tracing, right? We're using the fingers to follow it. I don't think I saw them tracing it, but they did use it a lot. In the opposite way as the I Spy game, where in the I Spy game, we're using those objects and we're listening for the sound. Now we have the symbol. We're listening, what sound does that symbol make? And then how can we apply that sound? So that is just a game that some of the children have used with it. Again, that wasn't one that was in my training, so I didn't really understand this game to begin with. But at the same time, it seems to work, right? It seems to be purposeful. And when we're evaluating what goes on in our classroom or even in our homeschool environment, our biggest question we should be asking is it purposeful? What are they getting out of this? And right here, you could really hear them using that the first sound in words to listen and associate it with the symbol. So I would say it's purposeful, right?
You see how your mouth will just...
All right, so we're getting into the movable alphabet, and when we do these pink and blue movable alphabets right here with the wooden letters, we're really focused on phonetic words. This is the first time we're really spelling out phonetic words, and then the child is sounding it out. So it really should be focused on the child either taking some objects that they want to write the words for, or just trying to sound out some words that they want to spell. And most likely, if they spell a few words, they might smush them all together. And so we do have to have a presentation on how to separate the words. But you're going to see this guide working with this student right here on that phonemic awareness as far as sounding it out, and then that phonological awareness of making a word, what is one whole word. So this is a really nice clip demonstrating how we work through that next step past the sandpaper letters. This would be the next step and where we go.
Because your brain to your mouth and then your mouth listens to your fat.
Say it very slowly. Got that. What do you hear after the ah? Fast. Say the word fast. You have that.
And this is one where if the child was having a hard time sounding it out, something that we do in Orton Gillingham is finger tapping. And so I would probably have the child sound it out on their fingers just to make it a little more concrete. Like, I'm trying to get my fingers in front of the camera here. Ah, s, t. And then we'd sound it out, do the finger tapping, sound it out on our fingers so that each sound went to each finger. And that way it helps the child have a little bit more of a physical representation of what they're doing. But the child is going to get it regardless. So as you can see coming up, so it's an option if you want to add finger tapping on to try and isolate each sound a little bit more. Sometimes it can help, and it can help when they actually start reading too, to when they see a word in a book and they start sounding it out as well. They can put those sounds on their finger. And that's what I say. Let's put our sounds on our fingers and sound it out.
Yes.
I'm excited to see the illustration.
Okay, so right here is the story alphabet, and this is one where once you've really moved on from the movable alphabet, which are more just short phonetic words, and you are ready to start spelling sentences, we get out the story alphabet, and the story alphabet just allows you to make sentences a little bit easier. It also has punctuations, and on the back side of the cards are capital letters, so you can start introducing capital letters. And the reason why we do this instead of paper is, one, it helps the child correct their work. Have you noticed that when children have paper and they make a mistake, they erase a lot? You'll give them new pencils, the erasers will be gone within an hour because they will have erased a lot. Well, the wonderful thing about the movable alphabet is just before they go to write on paper, they can write it all out with the movable alphabet. They can perfect it right there without having to worry about making a mistake. And then when they go to write it onto the paper, if they write it onto paper, which at first we don't do, we don't usually introduce this and also introduce writing on paper at the same time. And I can go into that more in a little bit when we start talking about the development of the hand. But here, this is really a good way to move forward. The child can write it all out on the rug with the movable alphabet. And this child, since they're writing a lot of sentences, I'm guessing they're probably going to write it on paper afterwards, but sometimes even if they don't, or if they don't want to write that much on paper, I might just take their picture with what they wrote so that I can at least send it home to their parents and they can see the work that they did, because not all the time do they want to write it on paper. It's a good exercise, but you know, it depends on the child and the situation. And sometimes if it's the end of the day, we don't always have time to write it down, and the child might not get it out the next day. So taking a picture of what they did is always an option that we can do too. All right, so handwriting development. When we go into talking about this, I'll explain a little bit more of why we don't introduce paper right away. So let's get into development of the hand for writing. All right, so you saw a little bit of a small chalkboard on a table. That is the first lesson. That's the first lesson, is a chalkboard, one of the smaller chalkboards that fit on a table. And we're going to start with a blank side. And then we would go on to one line on the chalkboard and the child would learn to write on one line, and then we'd add the multiple lines to show them how to go up and to go down to reach the top and the bottom. But also you see here, there's a huge chalkboard, and this should be something that's in every Montessori classroom. This should be in every preschool, kindergarten classroom, because some of those children, when they're learning that sound symbol relationship, especially if they struggle with dyslexia, making those big letters are it's a really valuable experience for the child to have if they're really struggling with retaining that sound symbol relationship. These big letters on a big chalkboard needs to be available for all the children in the classroom to help them learn that sound symbol relationship, as well as develop the hand for writing. Notice all of that, all the letters there are in cursive, because in AMI Montessori, we write in cursive and we read in print. And one of the most valuable things, well, there's two valuable things about this. And the first one comes from Montessori's observation of hand development. And when she was observing children, she noticed they naturally made these flowing motions when they were drawing, when they were just doodling. That was the natural development of the hand, the motion that they made. So cursive is a more natural movement for a child than print is. Now, the second valuable thing about cursive comes in regards to children who have dyslexia. Because cursive always starts at the same point, we always start in the same spot. If you think about that with all the letters, there's one starting spot on all the letters, same thing. That is a benefit for children with dyslexia, and cursive is beneficial for children and adults with dyslexia. So because it has that same place, it doesn't tax the memory system quite as much as learning print. So that's another valuable reason why we need to still teach cursive in our schools, either private or public. We really need to keep cursive there for those two important reasons. So metal insets. Now, at the same time that we are developing the hand through chalk, and chalk is important, even though I don't like the way chalk feels at all. I don't like it, but I push through it because actually when you work with chalk, your hand development, the way you hold it and just the way that you move your hand when writing on a chalkboard is more beneficial for development than with pencil and marker and pens and all of that stuff. So that is a really important part. But also at the same time we're developing our hand with chalk, we're also developing the hand through metal insets. And these are the metal insets right here. And there are specific very specific lessons that we give with the metal insets that help develop the hand. And I don't have metal insets, but I think I have a way of showing you the concept of the metal insets. Metal insets are all in the classroom. I didn't order any for myself, so I don't have any to show you, but I can show you the concept, and I can kind of show you the sequence, because it really does develop the hand. They're very specific. It's not just trace and do whatever you want. They are very specific lessons. So at the same time we're doing chalk, we're also introducing the metal insets, which develop the hand muscles. And then after that, that's when we start with paper. So we've got two important things that we have to do in hand development with writing before we get to paper, and that is chalk and metal insets. Here we are with reading development, and we're going to go through, I think it starts with object box 2. So as we get a glimpse of object box 2, which is phonograms, I will tell you a little bit more about the process and what comes before it. So let me show you real quick. All right, so if you see right here, there's all these objects and there's all these labels. And these labels, I don't know if you can see them very well, but they have different phonograms in them. Like one phonogram is tree, and that's a vowel team. The double E is a vowel team. And mouse, and the OU, that's a diphthong. And so we have all these phonograms. So we have these labels, and we're just matching them to objects. Now, before we would get to this is object box 2. Object box 1 is the same thing. It's just that we're staying with very phonetic words, like maybe log or frog. And so we'd have an object of a frog, and then we'd have the label frog. And we might do cup or tub. And so we have phonetic words with objects, and that's the difference between object box 1 and object box 2. And object box 1 is really where we have the child start reading with that one. And if the child is isolating all the sounds and not putting it together, we really work on that blending process of blending the sounds together to create one word. So let's take a little bit closer look at what this child is doing. And this one is fairly self-explained. I think you can see the cards. This is just phonetic words. They're a little bit more complicated words because they're more than one syllable, right? But still the phonetic words, not the phonograms. So she's reading through just a bunch of a little more complicated phonetic words.
I'm gonna have 2 people.
And if you can see the coloring on them, the red and the blue, that really helps correspond to the movable alphabet. So it should be, sometimes the movable alphabets, though, they mix up the colors depending on which brand you buy. So they're not always the same, but they should match up with these phonetic words right here. So that way, when they're looking at the consonants and syllables, the consonants are one color, the syllable are consonants and syllables, the consonants and vowels. The consonants are one color, the vowels are a different color, and these phonetic words should match the movable alphabet. So that way, as the child was beginning to write those words, should have that imprint in their mind of what color the consonants are and what color the vowels are. And that should help as they're going through and remembering the different sounds when they start reading.
I'm gonna have 2 people.
All right, these are puzzle cards or sight words. So these are the words that we have to memorize. And the way we do that in the AMI Montessori classroom is by a 3-period lesson. So we'll introduce 3 words at a time, and we'll do a 3-period lesson with those. And if you don't know what a 3-period lesson is, I do have a video. It's called Montessori Deep Dive, the 3-period lesson. So I do have a video on my channel if you wanted to check out what a 3-period lesson is and get more information about how we do that.
They get this come ho one
All right, before we get too far into this, let me just set up what's going on here. So this is how we do grammar in with our 3rd years, or as you probably might know it, with our kindergartners. And the way we do grammar is we have a sensorial impression of grammar, meaning the child is experiencing what the grammar is instead of being taught what the concept of the grammar. So what we would do right before this is the introduction to the adjective, and I'll explain that in just a second. But before this, what we would introduce is we would introduce the article and the noun. And so we would go through an activity to do that, and I will show you that in a different video. But we do go through the article and the noun, and then we introduce the adjective. And when we introduce the adjective, the children really love this. Like, they wait forever to be able to do the farm. It is the one of the things you can bet they're going to ask to do every single day throughout the year until they finally get a lesson on it, is the farm. Because when we introduce adjective, we introduce it like a clue, like they're being a detective. And so when I have the child, I say, okay, let's go set up the farm, and they'll set up all the animals, we'll set up the barn, and I will write a word on a piece of paper like the cow. And the child will read the label and then go get a cow, and I'll be like, oh, you know what? This is a cow. This is not the cow I'm looking for. And so I guess I'm going to have to write another clue. And so I'll write another clue. I'll cut the paper and I'll make room for another clue, and I'll say, oh, the brown cow. And so I'll put the word brown on there, and then the child will read it and go get the brown cow. And so we show the child how to do an adjective by going through this process of clues. And so these adjectives really help us become to solve kind of a mystery, right? They're a clue. And so that's what's going on here, is the children are differentiating between the different types of animals. And so once I give that introductory lesson, I'll have a bunch of labels they can read through, and those labels will differentiate between different animals, different objects on the farm, and they'll try to match it to that label. And that's what you're going to see right here.
Okay. How about the hay? Yes. Oh, how about he's trying to milk the cows? How about well, where's the bottle? Yeah. Duck. Duck pond. Farmer. Girl farmer. Busy farmer. Busy
You're going to use some clues.
Okay, so that was the introduction to the adjective. Now, this next game is the second lesson to the adjective, and it comes, it's, as you can see on the screen here, it's called the detective adjective game. And this is where we go back and we really need to make sure the child knows his triangles, because this is all about the different types of triangles, and it's every type of triangle. So we need to go back possibly to the sensorial area, make sure that we've learned the triangles, that we're familiar with them, and then we go on to this game. And this is a good motivation for learning the triangles. And it's really fun to hear the children read these really big words with all the different types of triangles. I know when I went through AMI training, I'm like, oh my goodness, I haven't thought about triangles in possibly ever. I don't think I learned my triangles besides an equilateral triangle growing up. Maybe I did, I can't remember, but I had to relearn them and make sure I knew what everything was. So it's a wonderful activity. And again, it comes in the idea of I'm presenting clues for the child to find exactly what I'm looking for. And that's, again, that sensorial impression of grammar. It's not that we are just telling them this is an adjective. We are letting them experience what an adjective is. We're not even going to use the word adjective. We're just giving that experience of what an adjective is. And then when they get into elementary, the elementary teacher is really going to start doing those really direct focus lessons and using all the correct labels for everything. But here we really want them to have that impression of what an adjective is, of what a verb is, of what the article and the noun is, the conjunction, the preposition, the adverb. And we get into verbs, it's really fun because it's all about movement, right? Or sometimes it's all about the inhibition of movement. There are a lot of verbs where you don't actually make a movement, and those are really fun to teach too. So especially when you tell the child, okay, I need you to think. Show me think, right? Because it's an internal action. So once you get through actions and the child learns, oh, well, I get to clap. I get to run around the classroom, because when you give them verbs and the label in the basket says run, like, well, you have to run, I guess. So things that you don't usually get to do in the classroom, you get to do when you get to verbs. So verbs are a lot of fun as well. So let's watch the detective adjective here.
To find out just which triangle I'm thinking of, because I'm thinking of just one. Oh, look at all that we have here. There are a lot of triangles right there. Okay, now I'm going to write a message for you as to which one I'm thinking about. There's an awful lot of triangles there, aren't there?
Yes.
Just pick any one. Yep. That's a triangle, but that's not the one I was thinking of. I better give you another clue, right? There are a lot of red triangles too. Why don't we just put away all of the triangles that are not red? That'll help narrow it down, okay? So any triangle that's not red, we're going to put away. The medium, red,
Acute angle triangle.
so find the ones that are not acute angles, and it'll help narrow it down too.
So I don't know if you caught that, but not only does he have to pick a triangle, because the first words are the triangle, and then, okay, the red triangle. So anything that's not red goes back in the box. And now I think the other word was medium. So the medium red, so get rid of the small and the large. And now we're looking for the acute angled triangles. And so we keep going through and we keep adding these clues. And that's why triangles are so great. But if you want to do something a little simpler, if you're in a homeschool environment, start out with colored pencils, right? You could have a short colored pencil, a long colored pencil, a medium colored pencil. So you could say the short red colored pencil, and you could even maybe mix in markers. And so you have to differentiate between colored pencils and markers and what color and what size. So anyways, just think about what you have around the house that you have a lot of different variations of that you could use for this game, because you don't have to use triangles, but if you want to use this exact type of setup, Montessori Print Shop has this for a couple dollars. You can download, so they've got the triangles already made for you. So you just download it, and then you can spend 3 days cutting them out like I did, because I actually bought this template so that I could have it exactly like AMI, because I was going through training and I really wanted to practice with what exactly I would see in my training.
That's a cute angle, yeah. Away. You found it. You're a detective. Okay. Want to do it again? Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
And that is the entire video that I have right now. Now, of course, this doesn't cover everything, but I hope this gives you just a little bit of a journey through that language development in the Montessori classroom. So that being said, if you like what I'm doing here, like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video.